So why don't we start at the beginning then? Just talking about your motivation. Why did you go to Bosnia the first time?
I was seeking excitement. I was in a brand new member of my unit, which at the time was 8th Field Engineer Regiment, and there was a lot of guys in there that I looked up to, and they had tours as well. And I was young at the time. I was maybe 18. I was 18, and I decided I'd like the adventure as well. And honestly, I liked the medals. I liked the way they looked, and the way they brought respect. So yeah, that was kind of my motivation initially. Is just a guy full of piss and vinegar, just trying to do something cool, right?
So you're just 18 years old. What did the non-military people around you, maybe your family, your friends, what did they think about your decision to go overseas?
Many people questioned it, but honestly, they just they weren't military-like people. They weren't looking for the structure that I was looking at and looking for. So personally, I didn't really have arguments about it with anybody. It's just, my parents say it's probably not a good idea. My sisters said it's probably not a good idea. Some of my friends said the same thing. And, I took that under consideration, but ended up going anyway. Yeah.
So what did you do for workup training? What sort of preparations did you have for going to Bosnia?
We had 6 months worth of workup at 1 Combat Engineer Regiment, and there was 2 of us reservists per section, and we did everything from ranges, live mine warfare training, lots of mine drills, lots and lots of mine drills. Lots of battle runs and things like that. We were still in a very pre-Afghanistan kind of mode in training-wise. So we do a lot of Wainwright battle runs and things like that, just getting ready for war, basically.
And when you look back on that, how adequate were those preparations for the tasks that you had to perform?
I think a lot of the combat training was, in retrospect, we didn't use. Everybody was very much at peace when I was there. There was a lot of training that went into like battle runs and section attacks and things that were unlikely but possible, I guess. So as far as the training is concerned, I found it very beneficial. I enjoy things like that. I enjoy learning new things. So, I think for the most part it was useful. If not during Bosnia, then during Afghanistan it came into play as well, right? So there's no such thing as a wasted experience. Yeah.
You said you were 2 reservists in the section. How at that time, 99, 2000, how were you treated? How were you integrated as a reservist?
Mm-hmm. I think we were given a hard time by the Reg Force guys for probably about a month before they accepted us. And once we were accepted, we were in. There was, no problems. There was no more. There's the odd joke that was thrown around once in a while, but we took it and we gave it back to them too, right? Probably the first month or so was tough, just proving ourselves to show them that we are just as fit as they are, just as capable, right? So there wasn't too much of a problem.
So what made the difference at that 1 month mark? Was there like one specific incident or something that all of a sudden you were okay after that?
There was a specific incident, but it's not something I can talk about on tape.
Okay. All right. So you're 18. You're heading over to Bosnia. What were your expectations about what it was going to be like?
I thought we'd do a lot more community projects when I was there, but it seems like we were there mostly in case of a mine strike, right? There was patrols going on, but there was no active fighting. You know, not even that many check stops going on. So a lot of it was socializing with the locals, not as much socializing as connecting and just kind of working with the locals to, I guess, to see what else we can do, right? But I was expecting more projects to be more busy. Instead, we ended up doing a lot of things like gate guard and a lot of drills, a lot of movies, you know, just to pass the time. Yeah. Well, overall, it was a busy tour, right? It was just not what I was expecting. Yeah, for sure.
It sounds like it was, to an 18-year-old young guy full of piss and vinegar, it was a bit of a letdown.
A little bit, yeah. I was definitely expecting to have more hands-on, you know, live mines and things like that, right? And maybe be a part of a mine strike, but the whole tour was rather uneventful, right? We did our patrols, we did our duties, you know, we built some bridges, things like that. So we did our fair share. It wasn't just as exciting as I was hoping it would be. Yeah.
Even though it didn't match those expectations, was there one day, one incident that kind of stands out for you as being memorable for some reason, good or bad?
There was one time where we were, I'm not sure what the location is called, but we were on at the base of a mountain, and as a section, it was on a airfield. And the airfield was it was pretty wrecked. There was a lot of holes in it. Obviously hit pretty hard by artillery. And we were walking along, basically doing a rucksack march. We're outside doing training, and there was basically that's when I've actually seen a real live minefield with all the tripwires and all the mines, kind of the fuses sticking out and stuff like that. And yeah, I think that was the most memorable, just seeing that environment and so close to the mines that I was actually hoping to handle personally. Yeah, yeah, that's probably the most memorable event out of that entire tour. Yeah.
What about the kind of connections that you made either with local Bosnians, if you had any contact with them, or with your fellow soldiers? What was it like for that in terms of friendship, socializing, things like that?
Sure. I think there was some mild friendships made. Nobody that I kept in contact with over the years since then. But definitely guys that I've ran into at other bases and stuff like that, and you know, we'll sit down for a drink or whatever. So you know, there's a lot of guys at one combat engineer regiment that when I went on my second tour to Afghanistan, they already knew me, right? So it was it was easier to progress into that rotation. Didn't really make any friends with the locals or anything like that. I didn't interact with them too much. No, but there was really good dudes on that tour, really good guys, right? And yeah, we got along for the most part.
What about when you came home? What was it like making that transition from full-time focus on being a combat engineer to, I'm not sure if you went back, did you go back to being a paramedic, or I guess you weren't trained as a paramedic yet, right?
Not yet, sir.
So what about that? What was that transition like?
As much as I remember about it, it wasn't too difficult, right? I came back, I you know, had a lot of money in the bank from the tour. I lived like a rock star for a while, right? And you know, a lot of people did say, "Hey, you changed," you know. But I mean, I think any person that's 18 changes, in a matter of 6 months. So I didn't see it as a big deal. I basically dove right into the job market, and I went back to telecommunications. I was a telecommunications engineer by trade at that point, and I just went into looking for a job. I found the job, and that was it. Yeah, kept on living.
People said to your face that they thought you'd changed.
Mm-hmm.
Did they ever say, like, how?
No.
In what way?
No, and I never really asked. Yeah, just wasn't that important to me.
The last question for me about Bosnia, but how do you think, how did it affect you as a soldier in terms of your skills, your confidence, things like that?
Yeah, definitely a confidence builder. Yeah. We did a lot of unexplosive ordnance disposal, and that was a confidence builder as well. All the training that we did on live warfare agents and things like that, on live mines and UXOs and stuff like that, that was a bonus as well, right? I got to do some of the cool stuff I was looking forward to, right? And there was really no close calls. And nothing really that crazy, so yeah, basically it was just a confidence booster. I came back and I felt a little bit proud of being, having done that, having actually been with the military and do some of the dangerous aspects of the job as well, right?
Is there anything that you want to say about Bosnia that I haven't asked you about? Anything, any aspect?
No, beautiful country. Yeah, it was very scenic. Too bad it was so mined that we were unable to see certain parts of it. But beautiful castles and friendly people, very beautiful girls. It was a nice place. It would have been a nice place if not for all the bullet holes in the buildings and stuff, right?
Did you do any, in terms of the demining there, were you doing any of that?
No.
That was all like a different...
That was all, it was locals demining and under the observation of a mine monitor, which was another position led by an engineer sergeant.
So then why don't we jump ahead then, 5 or 6 years, Afghanistan.
Yes.
So Canada's going into Kandahar. Now again, you volunteer a second time to go overseas. Tell me a bit about that decision this time.
This time around, I was working for TELUS in Calgary, and I was in a cubicle for about 3 years now at this point. And I heard that there's the possibility that it was up in the air still that we might be going to Kandahar. And through the sapper net, I heard that this could be a combat mission, right? And the rumors started flying, and I started, my ears perked up. And then when it became official, basically within a couple of days, I walked into my boss's office and I told him, that I'm planning on trying out, putting my name in for Afghanistan, and that I'd like to give in my notice for TELUS. And that was it. And I moved to Edmonton and basically worked full-time for my unit. Put my name into the request asking to go to Afghanistan on the first combat rotation. And and I got accepted. I did a couple of reservist courses at the time too. Just while I was waiting, I did my PLQ. So basically I got off PLQ and I was probably the best shape of my life. I was a machine, and basically it just motivated me even more to be able to go on the combat tour. Yeah.
Your employer, tell us, did you actually have to quit, or did they give you leave, or how did that work?
No, it was something that I knew I didn't want to come back to as well. So I didn't ask for any special leave or anything like that. I just quit and said I'll figure it out when I get back. Yeah, is what it was. Yeah.
And how old are you at this time?
At this time I was 26.
You've already been overseas once. This time, what do your family and friends say to you?
They were terrified. I don't think they quite understood the type of mission that it was going to be, right? I didn't want to tell anybody that, hey, this is going to be the real thing, right? And yeah, so I tried to keep that quiet. But I mean, they still said, well, what are you doing? What kind of mess are you getting yourself into, right? But I really wanted to go. Yeah, and I respected everybody's, complaints about me having to deploy or wanting to deploy, but yeah, I stuck with my decision, and I'm glad I did.
So I'm just curious, if you sort of going back 10 years, 15 years, like, were you a big risk taker as a teenager? Like, is this the kind of thing?
I think once in a while. One of my earliest memories is digging up shells in a Polish forest, right? Like digging in the trenches and stuff like that, and being so interested by it all, and by war, and by the munitions and things like that. And yeah, so I've always liked the military. It always interested me. I always enjoyed the weapons and the vehicles and all that stuff, and the airplane models and yeah, it's I think once I joined the military and I found the brotherhood as well, it was the perfect situation, and I wanted to give 100%. I wanted to be a machine physically and be able to respond appropriately mentally, and yeah, it became important to me. That's why I decided to go to Afghanistan. Yeah. I think a lot of it was also me trying to prove something to myself, right? Proving to myself that, hey, I can do this, right? And yeah, mission accomplished, right?
When did you come to Canada? How old were you?
I was 9 years old. Okay. I came here in 1989.
Okay. So your expectations for, well, let's just, again, the same sort of pattern, but in your workup training, in hindsight, how well did it prepare you for what you encountered in 2006?
I think it prepared me very well. Maybe it was a combination of the workup training and that I just came off my leadership course, right? I think I had a lot of skills that came naturally at that point in time. So that made workup quite a bit easier and helped me focus more on other details and just getting really good at the drills and the training and stuff like that. So yeah, the workup was pretty intense. It was 6 months. It was a lot of field time, and I think it was a great workup. Yeah. I knew what the mission was going to be. I knew what to expect, and yeah, I felt ready going in.
So you mentioned earlier, okay, that we think this is going to be a combat tour, it's going to be the real thing. So specifically, what did you think that would mean for you as a combat engineer?
I thought, well, first of all, what's going to happen is, I was thinking they're going to take me and put me in an infantry section, right, as engineer support, which did happen quite often. Second of all, I knew that you know, and at certain times I'd be mounted with the rest of my section, right? So we did do some engineer-specific tasks, right? So that's kind of, it was what I was expecting, right? And that I was ready for it as well, to be either deployed with within my own organization or being attached to somebody else.
If you were to visualize what you wanted to happen, you know, like almost like an athlete, you know, envisioning what this race is going to be like or whatever, what this tour is going to be like, what were you hoping it would be like, or what it would happen?
Exactly the way it worked out. The way the tour ended up is exactly what I was expecting, exactly what I was hoping for. It was everything that a soldier trains for happened on this tour to me, you know. And it was, you know, a lot of, you got to take the bad with the good. A lot of bad things happen on this tour, right? A lot of memories that, you know, are not so good, but a lot of really good things happen on this tour as well. And, you know, I was hoping for that fight. I was looking for that fight. I was looking for the excitement, and I got it all, right? Yeah.
So what were your first impressions when you hit the ground there? Like the first day or two, what was that like? What do you remember?
I remember everything was really far apart, and we had to walk everywhere on camp, and it was extremely hot. I just remember that the first couple of days, even walking was an effort. You know, we were drinking just liters of water every single day. Yeah, everything was quite spread out. I was surprised to see that they, you know, put all of us in a giant tent, right? So we had no overhead protection or anything like that. And there wasn't enough bunkers to fit all of us either. So basically, our drills were to put on our helmet or flak vest and sit on your bunk until the all clear is given if, you know, if there's a rocket attack or something like that. So that was pretty memorable too at the beginning. Yeah, it was dusty and it was hot, and it was a big shock on the body, that's for sure.
When did you get the shock of battle? When were you first in contact? Or?
First in contact, we probably left the wire within about 3 weeks of being in camp. So for the first 3 weeks, we drilled. We made sure our vehicle was good to go. You know, all of our equipment, everything. We made sure we were back on a normal clock with jet lag and everything. And then we started to deploy. And the point at which it became real for me is when we were out on patrol, a mounted patrol, and we were in the Panjwai district, and we got into our first tick, and basically it was the first battle, right? We were still mounted, everybody was mounted. The vehicle next to us was the FU party, which was the forward observing officer for the artillery. And I remember I was watching our flank with my weapon, and all the action was to the front, but I was watching our flank, and I was watching the lav next to us, and Captain Goddard was in the hatch, and her head was just poking out, and she took a rocket straight to the head. And that's when it became real for me, yeah, when I watched that happen. Yeah, and from then on, you know, it was a real war for me, I think. Yeah.
So what did you think to yourself after you, because that's what you were looking for, now you got it. What's your reaction at the time? Do you remember? Did you spend much time thinking about it?
I spent a little bit of time thinking about it. And, you know, it was more or less the reaction that I I went through was, that's the way it is, man, yeah. It's it's definitely a memory where something inside me changed forever, probably, right? Just seeing that first combat casualty, someone on your own team, right? So yeah, things became real for me, but it there was lots more to come, and it was early in the tour, and I knew that just have to, hey man, that's the way it is. Keep on going, right? Got a lot of tour left.
Did the people around you talk about it much at the time, or think everybody was in the same kind of headspace? We just got to put our heads down and keep going.
Yeah, we were all focused on the job. Yeah, very much so. There wasn't really much decompression after any of the events, right? Our tour just seemed like wherever I was is where things were happening, right? And it was non-stop, right? One thing after another after another. And definitely no decompression time to be able to reflect on everything that happened, before another event happened and another event happened, right? So, yeah.
In hindsight, do you think that decompression would be a good thing, or would it have maybe impeded how you did your job?
I think it's for a lot of people, it's territory that they wouldn't want to go down, because once you go down that path, you don't know how long you're gonna stay there and how long it's gonna, how far it's gonna lead you. Personally, and I think that we had our battle momentum, and in order to keep that momentum, right, to keep that mindset, we had to ignore certain parts of us, like a lot of our feelings and stuff like that, ended up getting buried for 6 months, right? Yeah.
Did it change how you approached your job, like the next day, a week later, a month later?
I found I started praying a lot more, but at the same time, I wasn't scared. I was praying, to do a good job, right? The fact that I could have been, killed, I think I made my peace with that really fast. Yeah, and it didn't really affect me for the rest of the tour. Not once did I think that I was going to die, even when things got sketchy, right? So yeah, we just accepted the fact that, hey, it could happen, and keep on going.
Were you religious? Did you pray before this tour?
Not religious, spiritual. Yeah.
But it's that whole thing. You don't want to let your buddies down, basically, right? You don't want to make a mistake.
You don't want to make a mistake, no. Not in those conditions, and not under those circumstances, right? You want to be sharp all the time, right? You want to do your job 100%. You got to be able to trust each other. That's the biggest thing. You don't want to break that trust, right? Incredible experience.
You mentioned how you were used a couple of different ways. Where you're with infantry section, or mounted with engineers. Was there one role that you preferred, or was there one role that you didn't enjoy?
I really enjoyed working with the infantry. The front line stuff has always been what excites me the most about the military. And the engineer stuff I like quite a bit as well. But it's the front line, the advance to contact, that always got me excited. So being embedded in an infantry section, we were the first into a lot of situations, and those situations is where the guys rely on you to do your job, whatever it is, whether it's an IED that they found, or to do a proper search of a vehicle or something like that, right? And I do my engineer specific job, and then it'd be back to being a frontline Army guy, right? So that was my favorite part of the tour. Yeah, it was definitely the most demanding because we spent a lot of time dismounted with the infantry, but it was the most rewarding, I think.
Is there another day or a couple of days that stand out for you doing that job, or?
There is, so many days that stand out. I mean, from, some of the better memories, which better memories, it's kind of a morbid thing to say, but, for me, one of the better memories from there was seeing a United States convoy ammunition truck get rocketed. And then luckily everybody escaped, right? But we sat on the side of the mountain and watched this old ammunition on this truck cook off for hours, right? Before we went in there and deemed the area safe. But I mean, it was a fireworks show, right? And it's one of those things that, I always look back on and say, that was actually kind of cool. I'm glad everybody made it out okay, right? And that was actually a pretty cool experience. Some of the other experiences like, the climbing the mountains over there dismounted, going deep into the mountains, and then just the amount of effort that it took, every single step. It was a lot of work and a very big sense of accomplishment as a result after. There's the whole battle that we spent in Helmand province near the end of the tour. Those are just days full of memories and contacts with the enemy, and that was when the tempo was at its fullest too. And I mean, there's a lot of events that I remember, some of the dumb stuff that some of my comrades did. Right? A specific event is we were making, on pre-training here back in Canada still, we were making water ration heater bombs. So you take a empty bottle, you put the water ration heater in there, put a little bit of water in there, you twist it up, and as the gases expand, it pops the bottle and creates a loud bang. And one of my friends thought it was a good idea to do that overseas, and he threw it under our sergeant's, one of the sergeant's beds, and I was watching this bottle, and it swelled up to probably the biggest I've ever seen. It was just like a freak bottle that swelled up to 4 times its size. And when it popped, we were in a forward operating base at the time, and it popped so loud that everybody basically just left what they were doing, put on their gear, and went to the nearest either safety area or observation point. Everybody was getting ready for war, and I mean, there was guys running with underwear, tack vest, helmet, weapon, right, going to their post and stuff. So this friend ended up on latrine duty, ended up burning crap for a long time. Yeah, it was one of the better memories of the tour, right? Not necessarily for him, but just looking back at it, I can definitely see the humor. Yeah.
How would you compare the friendships you made on this tour with the ones you made on the Bosnia tour? Any difference?
Oh, giant difference. Yeah. I have so much respect for the guys I went overseas to Afghanistan with, just based on on my ability to trust them. None of us let each other down, and I make it a personal a mission to every year, every summer, go camping near one of the guys that I was overseas with, and to reconnect with them and share some stories, and talk about how it was, and it just it seems that the relationships I formed in Afghanistan are a lot stronger, and they mean a lot more to me. Yeah, I am, more interested in pursuing them, even though it's been, 10 years already. Yeah, I still seek these guys out and still, try to do coffee and make it to their weddings and things like that. Yeah.
So, you had probably the most event-filled tour of the entire war for any Canadian. What kind of, you went in there, you said you were a machine, your best shape of your life. What kind of shape were you in at the end of the 6 months before leaving Afghanistan?
Even fitter. When I left, I was 185 pounds, and I was solid. I was a solid 185 pounds. When I came back from Afghanistan, I was 150 pounds. Next to no fat. I think I had less than 2% body fat when I got tested. And I was lean. I was running 10 kilometers a day with my tack vest with the ballistic plates in it. Every single day that we were back in camp, I would do that. Yeah, it was probably the only time in my life I ever had a six-pack. Yeah.
What about mentally? Were you burned out by that point?
I don't think I was burnt out, but I think it was time to go home. There was a lot of things that that everybody on that tour went through, and I think 6 months of the number of events that we dealt with was enough. Because I don't think anybody came back from that tour okay or the same. Let me put it that way. A lot of people came back okay. There was a lot of that, a lot of us that didn't. But if you look at the statistics, there was approximately 600 Canadian soldiers that were in the field. Out of the Canadian contingent that was over in Afghanistan during my deployment, there was only about 600 of us that were actively outside of the wire, and we lost over 60 guys. One in 10 of us basically didn't come back, right? I just wanted to bring that up, and that I think had a lot of impact on a lot of people. Like I said, I don't think anybody came back the same, right?
Did you go to Cyprus?
No. Decompression? For decompression, yes, I did.
So what was that like?
For me, I don't remember much. It was a lot of drinking. I did a couple of tours, and of course I did a wine tasting, and did a couple of things like that. But for the most part, all I remember is just drinking. Yeah.
How useful? Because you talked about decompression earlier, right after Nicola Goddard's death. How useful was this decompression as a way station before coming back home, do you think?
I think it can be useful, right, if you're in the right mindset. But personally, drinking doesn't solve anything, but I spent the entire decompression drinking. If I would have stayed sober, right, in hindsight, and spent more time relaxing and, trying to be in a safe, atmosphere, and knowing that I'm in a safe atmosphere and things like that, then it could have been a lot more influential. But yeah, for me, my decompression didn't start till a few years after. Yeah.
So what's it like coming home this second time after this eventful, deadly tour? Now you're back in Alberta.
It was emotional, right? You just don't think that anybody understands. You want to tell people, you want people to understand, but it's extremely frustrating because you can't show somebody what it's like. You know, there was a lot of anger, a lot of drinking, a lot of stupid things were done, definitely a lot of stupid choices made, right? But yeah, there was, you know, you hear a lot of people complain about things that just don't matter to you anymore, right? Very trivial things, and that's frustrating as well. Yeah.
Why is it important for other people to understand? Like, what is it that you want them to understand when you came back?
I think the amount of effort that, you know, there are people out there that put so much effort into making, you know, this a better country, a better place, right? And people just they give so much, you know, in some cases their entire lives or their health, right? And I want other people to be inspired by that, right? I want other people to understand how much effort, you know, went into this conflict from the soldiers, from the ground troops. And I want people to understand it because, you know, we need more people like that, right? In our society, in our, you know, not just in our military, but in our emergency services, in our government, right? I want these people to understand so they can use it to progress.
You said that your decompression, real decompression, didn't start for a couple of years. What happened?
Basically, I spent a few solid years in the bottle. While I was going through EMT school, then paramedic school, I was basically drinking full-time, going to school full-time, and working full-time. And after you know, drinking for so many years, I finally started realizing that, hey, this isn't just a matter of I have more problems than other people. It's not because I've been through more. Like, there's something else going on here. I'm drinking way too much, right? And I was pretty much at the most vulnerable point that I could be at, and I got news that my best friend George Miak had passed away. And that was basically my breaking point, and from that point on I decided that I really needed help. And that's what I did. I walked into the base mental health services within a couple of days after that, and you know, that's when I started decompressing and actually healing, is when I started coming off the alcohol.
How helpful has the military been in that regard, in helping you?
Extremely helpful. I wanted to help, and I know that they saw that. Everybody, you know, there was almost everybody along the way was very helpful and very engaged in me getting better. I was ready for the help, right? I was ready. I wanted to do it. I wanted to become sober. You know, and that's exactly what I told the mental health department when I went to see them. And from that point on, everybody went, you know, out of their way to make sure that I was taken care of well. And I got all the treatment that I needed, all the treatment I could hope for, and yeah, to me, I consider myself a good success story. I know there's a lot of people that haven't been so. I guess haven't been healed from their wounds.
And I'm just conscious, it's 9:30 now. Do you have time for just another couple of questions, or do you, yeah? So what kind of a soldier were you coming back from Afghanistan, but while you're dealing with the drinking and everything else? Did the drinking affect you? Were you a better soldier? Like, how would you rate
I was an angry soldier for a while, mostly because now I was parading with my unit again, and things weren't real anymore, right? The training we did was fictional, with a fictional enemy, and and dud landmines and things like that, and I was still in warrior mode, right? So it was difficult parading with my unit after for a while, but I mean, there's so many good people in that unit that I just I couldn't let that go, right? I stayed for the people.
And then speaking of people, you've done a number of things since you got yourself healthy again to help others. Tell me about those things and kind of what these initiatives that you've started to help others.
Well, the initiatives started basically when I decided to self-publish a book of photographs that I took on the Afghanistan tour. And along with some stories, explanations, some anecdotes, quotes from other guys that were there. And I made this book, put it together, and I started selling it. And all the proceeds I've taken, and I have been using them towards well-being projects for emergency medical services frontline staff, so paramedics and EMTs out on the front lines. Because that's, I don't think that they get as much support and help as they should. So basically, some of the money that I managed to get from the book sales went towards things like donations towards guys with EMS professionals with PTSD, right? To help them out. Also, things like grub bags, which were basically a box lunch, an army box lunch version of a civilian meal, non-perishable, right? And I made, I think, close to 600 of these meals, and I put them in all the stations in Edmonton, so crews can just come in and on the fly eat something, at least something semi-nutritious, right? Instead of having to stop at McDonald's or whatever else, or not getting a meal at all. So yeah, I've been working on some other projects as well. I was given the assignment of health and wellness manager for the Alberta Paramedic Association. So I'm the head of the health and wellness department, and that's helping me do some good frontline projects as well and get involved in in the EMS community.
How, if you had to sum it up, looking back, how did your experience? How do you think your experience changed you, altered you?
For the best. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I think it has shaped me in many ways. It helped me respect certain parts of life for what they are, right? Yeah, it was an incredible experience, and I cherish every piece of it, good or bad. Yeah, I cherish that entire experience.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you about it that you want to say to wrap things up?
I could honestly talk about Afghanistan for a very long time. I have a lot of cool stories, but just for this interview, I think there's nothing else that really pokes out.
Good. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.